It has just been announced that Team SoloMid has signed Yellowstar for their support player for the 2016 season. He is going to be coming on in. Singh was initially considered for the position, but he has decided not to accept the role from TSM and has instead decided to move back to Europe to play in that region, to live in that region. And Yellowstar was looking to leave Fnatic, it seems like, and TSM has now picked him on up. So another European has fallen to the NA money boys. That's the joke for right now. Well, this move has a lot of implications to Team SoloMid. And if this isn't the move that makes TSM one of the definitive best teams within North America this upcoming year, then there's probably nothing that could ever make that occur for TSM to do that, just because of what Yellowstar brings into the team and how that benefits TSM in incredibly important ways. So to talk about that for a moment, we have to look at what the old TSM roster problems were. The roster from last year when you had Dyrus in the top lane, Santorin as the jungler, Bjergsen in mid, Wild Turtles ADC, and Lustboy as support. We can look at the problems that team had and then see how this new roster not only addresses all those problems, but it then empowers TSM to move forward. So the old roster had the issues of it only had one real carry on the team, which was Bjergsen. Wild Turtle was inconsistent and had huge positional mistakes that prevented him from ever being like a reliable carry threat. He had his one-off games like on Jinx, but that was about it. Dyrus was just, he's been a long-time player, but he was never like this like really lane dominant or mechanical player who could out-duel his opponents, things like that. He was just kind of like this low econ top laner who tried not to get steamrolled over from jungler attention, have the enemy top laner snowball all over him. And as the meta shifted more to being top lane centric, TSM continued to suffer for it just because Dyrus was not a player who could be a carry within the team. Then you had Santorin, who was inconsistent at times, who would sometimes make a couple of good ganks in the map, but most of the time he wouldn't even like venture out from the jungle. Incredibly passive player who just did not impact the game in a way that TSM needed him to do so. Then you had Lustboy, who was a good roaming support, but he couldn't do that often because Wild Turtle usually needed him in the lane with him just to ensure that he got through laning phase. And then on top of that, Lustboy never really brought in the shot calling or macro game element for the team because he doesn't speak a whole lot of English. There's some English in there, but he could not communicate like the complex ideas and stratagems that the team needed to know about when it came to macro shot call handling. So because of the setup of this team, you basically have Bjergsen as your only carry, and even then he was inhibited from carrying the team because he was the shot caller for the team. We've seen this happen with Bjergsen's development. When he first came to NA and Xpecial was on the team, Bjergsen was by all means a laning god within the context of the North American scene. He was crushing all the NA talent in there, just creating leads for himself, snowballing, being this carry force. But once he started to take on the shot call role for himself, the organization moved that onto him as Xpecial left the squad, things like that. Once that began to occur, Bjergsen never really he didn't decline. He could not just focus solely on laning, and so that hurt his ability to draw advantages from the laning phase and be a carry force for the team. He's been able to play almost despite that burden and still be a carry force, despite the fact that he can't even focus entirely on his own lane because he's busy trying to babysit, well, not really babysit, but to handle the macro stratagem of TSM, which has been fairly poor because he's not a person who can shot call, or at least he's not a mid laner who can handle shot calling while he's also trying to control his lane. So TSM has slowly begun, over with these roster changes that they made so far, has begun to rectify these mistakes. They've gotten Hanser, who is similar to Dyrus in the sense that he's a low econ top laner, but he's not as exposable as Dyrus has been, and he's shown that he can be a very good player in his own right at the San Jose tournament where he's played against Soaz and Flame from LGD and performing very well against those two top laners. And I believe Acorn also showed up a bit, but he also did very well. So Hanser is going to be a person that, upgrade there, perfect, so they're not going to have that issue for it. Then you have Sanskaran coming on in, replacing Santorin. Now, Sanskaran is the opposite of when Santorin was. Sanskaran is aggressive. He will get in the enemy jungler's face. He'll gank the lanes actively, and so he's going to be kind of like a secondary carry force within TSM, just in case something's going awry or some lane needs attention. He'll be there to provide that. Then you had Doublelift, which is a massive upgrade over Wild Turtle. In the blockbuster move from CLG, Doublelift comes on in, and he was the main carry of CLG. He had most of the gold pumped into him. He did the most damage on the squad. Now, whether or not he's going to get that same attention, be able to perform at that same way, has yet to be seen within TSM. But that's still a higher ceiling for potential. Imagine me talking about potential CLG than Wild Turtle ever brought to the table. So now Bjergsen suddenly has this reliable secondary carry force that he hasn't had before. He used to have to worry, like kind of almost carry Wild Turtle's slack and make up for Dyrus' shortcomings and, deal without Santorin really providing him a whole lot of support outside of Vision. So now that we have this in here, suddenly there's a little bit of weight off Bjergsen's shoulders that someone else can take for sure. Now, TSM was exploring Cassine. They were looking at bringing him on. They were doing a tryout for him through San Jose, and since Cassine has decided not to follow up on TSM had to look for some couple other players, and they happened to have acquired Yellowstar. So what does Yellowstar bring to TSM that, further kind of makes up for those things? Well, first off, experience, which has a two key-pole thing. He's experienced as a shot caller. So suddenly TSM has this person who's been shot calling for years for a team, and if you consider Fnatic's macro game shot calling, it's been quite good. It hasn't been phenomenal or otherworldly like we saw with Cloud9 back when, when their squad originally came about, or the Tigers and how they can manage coming back from these huge deficits in the mid and late game. But it was good shot calling. It worked. I mean, Fnatic went undefeated in the summer split. They had a really good run of Worlds going up to the semifinals. It was good for the parts that they had. And so Yellowstar bringing that into TSM is something that squad has needed for quite some time. So that shot calling element then, now that we can assume that Yellowstar will be handling that role within TSM, relieves Bjergsen of that burden of having to shot call. And so now Bjergsen doesn't have to worry about that. He can focus solely on the lane. So not only does Bjergsen now have really good teammates around him, now he has a teammate who can relieve him of the burden that's held him down the most. If Bjergsen doesn't go off on the split and just wreck absolutely everybody within NA, and then be able to make TSM an international carry force, then Bjergsen is effectively not failed to live up to the hype that everyone's been expecting from him all of this time. Furthermore, with Yellowstar's experience, comes with Doublelift. So we know the Doublelift has these problems when it comes to trusting his teammates. We've seen the same song and dance before when he was on CLG. The split would start. He'd be telling everyone, no, I trust my teammates. It's all good now. The problems are gone. And then, some problems, a couple games would be dropped. And then, we're seeing him have issues with the teammates. Oh, I can't trust that guy. And he'll blurt these things out that are, really crass to say about anyone's teammates, including his own. And suddenly there's like Discord, and you can't trust that guy anymore. It causes him to behave roguishly. It disrupts the team environment within the household, causes tensions to rise up, which we've seen kind of come to climax when CLG said, okay, Doublelift, you're out. Not as abruptly as some probably would have us think, but CLG has decided that Doublelift is the problem that has to be removed from the situation in order for the organization to progress on. So Yellowstar coming on in. When you think about it, now I don't know the personal relationship between the two players. I don't know if there's like a history of them or not, but we have to, look here and say that, okay, this isn't some new hyped up young blood or some English as a second language guy that Doublelift can't really communicate with, that he's working with. This is a guy who's been in the scene for years, has consistently taken teams to play well at an international level, has done well at a regional level, consistently making European finals or semifinals. Things like that. So just by the track record alone, Doublelift is someone who's probably can look at Yellowstar and be like, hey, this guy's been around the block. He knows what he's doing. I can trust this guy. I can have faith in this guy. More CLG memes coming out. So with that coming on into it, now suddenly, there could be a chance that we could have, in a way, a Chaucer kind of like situation where Yellowstar could kind of control Doublelift, kind of keep him curbed on in. Now, we don't know if that's like really the case, just because Yellowstar hasn't really worked with emotionally difficult people who speak English as a first native language. But he has been on a team with Xbecky, he has been on a team with SOAS, he did fairly well with them, and those two can be quite, the confident, I'm right, you're wrong kind of personality type. So he's worked with strong personality types before, and he's had success within there. So there's enough reason to believe that just because Doublelift can, look at Yellowstar and say, this guy's experienced, he has a lot of accomplishments, I can respect him. And then Yellowstar having some background with working with people who have a bit of an ego problem like Doublelift, we could have someone who could effectively control those impulses from Doublelift, kind of keep him in line and really keep this whole team synergy that's really important working together. Furthermore, because he comes to the same region as Scarad, I don't know about language thing here, so keep in mind with that. But there's some familiarity within the roster. But that's like a very side tangent point. It's more important that Yellowstar comes in, relieves Bjergsen of shot calling, and is able to keep Doublelift in line. On top of that, Yellowstar has a very wide champion pool. He can play engage supports really well, thus eliminating another burden off of Bjergsen. So, because if you consider the old roster, Santorin would never go in. Lust Boy couldn't communicate well enough to set up the engagement. Dyrus wasn't really good at engaging, teleport, flanking. So now that he's got Haunter, who probably can do those things very well, but Yellowstar, who has a name for himself, like he's famous for his Alistar play. Now that they have someone who can start fights, who can make some good engagements for Team SoloMid, that takes more of the pressure off of some of the other players and solidifies this roster as something that we could really look forward to. On top of his engaged players, he also plays disengaged supports like Janna incredibly well. This opens up TSM to play a bunch of different strategic styles where they could do something like, hey, like this game we'll do something fairly standard, Bjergsen can carry it. The next game, hey, let's put Doublelift on Protect the Tristana, or a comp like that, giving them some versatility within the team to work around and move and adapt within the series. So this roster acquisition for Team SoloMid should be the move that makes TSM an international force. If it doesn't, there's something fundamentally wrong with possibly Bjergsen not being able to carry. Maybe some of the players are underperforming. Maybe there's some in-house problems. The coaching staff can't get the team to work together on the same page, can't get it to function as it should. But this is another roster acquisition for TSM that is pushing them closer to the brink of being an actual international force. Not in the sense that, okay, maybe they could they could win Worlds, sweep it in the same dominating fashion as SK Telecom, but a team that could certainly take some games off the best teams in the world for sure, and they should surely be a contender, like if not just like have been bequeathed the throne of NA with these acquisitions so far throughout the split. So that is my thoughts on Yellowstar being picked up by Team SoloMid. It's a very good move right here. Sorry, Fnatic fans, for your wonderful team kind of crumbling down, and if anything else that this story tells us, it's that we know that the TSM fashion merchandise store does a better job of reporting than Jacob Wolf of the Daily Dot. Love you, Jacob. Tease ya. Thank you guys for watching this one. You guys have a good night.